introduce our next session and speaker. This is where it's getting fun. Do you have your pens, papers, notebooks ready to take all the notes? Because you're going to get some of the best legal advice out there from Taylor. And I'm going to tell you, the next session is the legal essentials. Here she is. The legal essentials for a solid business, which is led by our friend Taylor M. Tiemann. So Taylor has actually been part of the Amiga community before it was Amigas, when it was Changemakers Collective, and we still call her like she's like the Amigas lawyer because she's always present for any questions that people have been, when people are sharing on the feed, when they have legal questions, we always know that they can count on Taylor, and it's been beautiful to see her growth. She's an attorney and a founder of Legal Amiga membership, an accessible legal services membership created specifically for small business owners and entrepreneurs. She is here for you. Taylor assists and advises her clients on how to legally protect their brand, services, products, and content through the effective use of preventive measures and legal strategy. So she specializes in trademarks and contracts, copyright, podcasts, and business formation. Taylor, please take the stage. I promise to hug you. You're humming?
I think I got a thing.
Oh, no, that's not. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Okay. So thank you for the intro. I don't know how I'm going to follow those two. My name's Taylor. I'm a business and trademark attorney. I'm very excited to be here. I also brought my mom, so she's never seen me speak before, so I'm very excited that she's here. And yeah, this is such a weird experience because I went to law school like down the way, maybe like 15 minutes. And I used to come to this mall sometimes, so like this is just such a weird thing to be like here talking about law in front of all of you guys, so I'm really excited. Next. There's gonna be a lot of nexts because we got a lot of slides. I've packed this full of information for you guys. Questions, if you have them, make sure to either approach me after, or I'm going to give you guys a free consultation. There's gonna be a code at the end of the presentation. Make sure you grab that, get your free consult. Next. So yeah, this is me. I think they covered a lot of this, but if you are into astrology, I'm a Cancer, Leo, Scorpio. And what we essentially do at my firm is we help business owners just like you. I actually started my firm kind of in the middle of ending with another law firm. Don't tell that law firm. And what I saw was so many business owners, Latino business owners specifically, doing such cool things, but not really knowing how to protect your businesses by no fault of your own. It's just a thing that, I started a business 3 years ago, and all the stuff you have to learn is like out of control. So I saw that there were not a lot of protections in place, and I wanted to be able to kind of help bring that in a way that felt comfortable, because I also know that approaching a lawyer, talking to a lawyer is not always fun all the time, and it's a little scary. And we also really, I pride myself on being able to represent everyone with a cultural aspect in mind of understanding where you're coming from when you're starting your business. I think all of us have so much that we bring to our businesses from a cultural perspective, and that's so important. And it's also very important that you're ideally working with somebody that kind of can understand that as you're going through the process. But yeah, we help all business owners. We have, how many of you are service-based business owners? Sweet, okay, product-based? Awesome, oh, we almost have a 50-50 split. Okay, cool. But yeah, we help with contracts, trademarks, business entity formation, and we're gonna go through all those topics. Next. So I am a softball player at heart. I played softball in college, so everything is a sports quote around here. To me, the best legal defense is a great legal offense. So a lot of business owners, the first question is like, how do I not get sued? We can't, unfortunately, tell people not to sue us, but what we can do is say, here's the protections that I have in place. If I do get sued, how are they gonna help me? And how do I take steps from there? Next. I wouldn't be a lawyer if there wasn't a disclaimer, so you can read this, but I see a lot of familiar faces, so you guys know I do this all the time. Anything I'm telling you is not legal advice, it's informational. If you do want to talk to me, schedule the consult, and I'm also California licensed. So state-specific questions, keep that in mind. Everybody here is probably local, but if you're out of state, you might need to work with a local attorney. Next. So here's what we're going to be covering, and these are our top 3 legal protections that no matter what type of business you're running, we encounter these and we cover these first and foremost. So entity protection, trademark and branding protections, and then also contractual relationships. And let's get started with entity protection next. So when we're looking at entity protection, you're probably like, what are you talking about? What's an entity? This conversation is when we're talking about LLCs, corporations, how to create an entity around your business to protect yourself, ideally from lawsuits. So what we look at as lawyers when we're looking to protect your business is how do we shield you from the most amount of personal liability possible. If you are operating a business, no matter what you're doing, I don't care how much you're selling, I don't care if you just went to your first pop-up and sold 1 item, you are running a business and potentially putting yourself out there vulnerable to be liable for something, some sort of lawsuit. I hate to bring like the bad news bears, but like that's what it means to be running a business. So in order to ideally prevent that liability from being able to reach our personal assets, homes, cars, bank accounts, your wages even, we want to, at some point, ideally protect the business with some sort of entity, and we'll be going through a couple of these and what they look like. Next. So we have, these are our 2 most common entities that we're working with business owners that are first starting. Of course, this will depend very much on your specific business, but these are the factors that we look at when we're trying to decide, do you want to form an LLC? Do you want to form a corporation? I didn't include corporation up here yet because LLC is so much more common. Just know that if you're a professionally licensed service provider, you oftentimes have to form a corporation, so don't get too excited about the LLC yet. Sole proprietors, this is your entity that you automatically start off with. So that's your default entity. If you start running a business, and are like, I'm not ready for the LLC yet, I don't want to file it yet, you are still a sole proprietor. So it's our default entity, but you may still have to file something called a DBA or an FBN, that's our doing business as, or a fictitious business name statement, depending on your county's rules. That is a compliance-based filing. So a lot of people file those and they're like, oh, I filed my business, I'm protected. That's not an actual legal protection for your business. It's a compliance filing that the County of Los Angeles wants to know, all right, who is the business owner, what's the business name, etc. A lot of businesses start as sole proprietors because of the low startup costs. The personal liability, though, as we were talking about, is a factor because as a sole proprietor, anything that you're doing within your business, if you get sued, your assets could be reached. So that's the downside of operating as a sole proprietor. And sometimes it is a little bit difficult to raise capital. Not always, but if we do have investors coming in that are looking to really take part in the business, want to put money into the business, they very often want to see that you have an entity protected so that something you do outside of the scope of your business is not going to get intermingled with that. As a sole proprietor, you can't take out a traditional business loan, meaning you can't take out a loan in the name of the business if you are essentially the business. You can still take out a business loan though, but it's just a little different categorized. The LLC, when we're looking at it, it's our most popular entity, and that's because it's pretty easy to set up and create. If you are looking at a corporation, a lot of business owners come to us asking, I heard a corporation's the best, I really want to start a corporation. If your business qualifies for that, and if it's a good situation, we can look at a corporation, but for the most part, and what probably most of what you're doing, an LLC will be just fine and do exactly what a corporation will do for you. You do avoid the personal liability, meaning you've created the entity around the business, meaning if you get sued, the business gets sued and not you. The LLC does have a lot of tax selection flexibility, so I'm sure Vanessa's probably going to talk about this, but with the LLC, you can start looking into that S-corp potential tax selection or other types of tax selection for the LLC. And again, because it's an LLC, sometimes it's a little bit easier to raise capital. Next. So here's some common considerations when we're having conversations with business owners on what you should be looking at when you're looking to potentially incorporate the business, start the LLC. Do you have employees or are you planning to hire them soon? California is extremely employee friendly. It is not always the best state to be in as an employer. So knowing that, not to scare you, knowing that we sometimes jump into an LLC much sooner when you do have employees because employment lawsuits are on the rise, going to continue to be on the rise, and it is because the laws keep changing so frequently. So if you want to put a protection in place to help kind of ease that issue, we can look at an LLC. Do you have any business insurance currently? So if you have business insurance, ideally that's going to work together with your LLC, kind of like a Venn diagram of like if there's an issue in the middle, both might help. If there's an issue that the insurance only covers, we ideally want them both, but if you have business insurance for a major risk area that the LLC is not going to protect, you might want to wait on the LLC. Is your industry inherently risky? So there are just some industries that are going to be much riskier than others. Anytime we're dealing with food, cannabis industry, topical items, those are just much riskier than potentially selling clothing because the lawsuits are there, especially if you're using products that are like going into people's bodies, on their skin, etc. What are your personal assets and how do you want to protect them? You might be thinking, well, I'm just renting, I might not have a home, or I have a loan on my car. Your assets can be even considered things like your business wages. So if you are sued for something that the business does, a court can come back and say, well, we're going to garnish your wages from your business, meaning that paycheck that you get, they can potentially access those funds. What are your current personal tax liabilities? This is another great conversation to have with whoever's helping you with your taxes. What does your personal tax situation look like? What does it look like if we bring in an LLC that's going to be taxed? Potentially it's on its own. So we want to look at all of these things. Next. Management and upkeep is another big one to consider, mostly because how much, when we form the LLC, how much are we going to continue having to pay to keep it up? This is probably the number one reason that people dissolve or shut down their LLCs is because they were not aware going into it that there are fees to keep the LLC active and protecting you. So you need to still have a business license regardless of your business entity. So even if you are operating a business without an LLC, you need a business license. Those DBA and FBN requirements still apply to you even if you don't have an LLC, but they also will apply if you do have the LLC. Your annual reports due to the state of California, state of wherever you're operating your business from, they want to keep up and know that your business is running. The registered agent requirement, that's every state has a requirement that you have to have a registered agent to receive, essentially, if you get sued, a lawsuit in their hands. So you do either have to hire a registered agent or be your own registered agent. Franchise tax board fees in California right now are $800 a year. They are waiving those for your first year through the end of 2023. They're also waiving the filing fees of $70 through June of 2023. But those franchise tax board fees, if this is like very much a side hustle and you don't plan on building it and scaling it immediately, that $800 could make or break your decision. Keeping up with accounting and tax compliance, and then also your contracts and your legal documents. Once we have that LLC, you have to make sure that you're signing your agreements under the name of the LLC. You're entering your business relationships under that umbrella protection of the LLC, or else what else did we file it for? Next. Understanding the benefits of an LLC. I think we went through most of these, but again, separating your personal assets from your business dealings. This is not like a legal necessity, but the perceived status of an LLC. So I have worked with some business owners that because they work in potentially influencer space, businesses might want to see that you have an LLC, that you're taking things seriously. Not to say that that is true or that I believe that should be happening, but that's just what we have to deal with. Doing business with others, are you going into business with a friend? Is your friend someone who takes high risk decisions? Do you feel 100% comfortable going into business with them? How do we kind of alleviate that liability? And you can also, looking forwards, incorporating your LLC into your estate planning for the future. We don't offer that service, but we have great referrals that do. But thinking about how are we going to potentially pass this business down, even if, I don't want to ever talk about people dying, but like upon death, if you want to sell the business, does it go to your children? Are your children going to inherit the business? A business in itself is such an asset that we want to think about it that way as too. Next. Okay, trademark and branding. So we're going to totally shift gears to a different subject, and we're looking at how we're really centering the branding discussion around legal. So when we're naming our business and we're naming any offers, picking logos, picking slogans, this is how we're looking at protecting everything centered around branding. So this conversation should be happening as early as possible, even if you're sitting here thinking like, I might want to start a business one day. The earlier that we have these conversations, the earlier that you understand this, the better. If it's later, if you're like 3 to 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, it's never too late to protect, but we always want to have the conversation as early as possible. The reason I like talking about this is because this is probably number one misconception of business owners, that they filed the LLC or they filed the DBA. They think that they own the business name and they actually don't. So let's talk about it. Next. So first, let's go through trademark versus copyright, because this is a very popular question that people ask all the time. And still, it's hard to even get in one slide. So even if at the end of this you're like, what the heck are you talking about? We can chat about it. Trademark and copyright are two different types of intellectual property law that can be applied to your business to help protect the things that you're creating, but they kind of fall into two different buckets. Sometimes they will overlap, sometimes, but for the most part, I like to separate them into two different buckets so it's easier for you as the business owner to really look at your business and what we have as trademarks and what we have as things that are potential copyright material. So a trademark in and of itself, definition, is just a word, design, or expression that identifies the source of goods or services. So your trademark is the name or logo or slogan or thing that your consumer customer recognizes your business as a thing that's selling that. So great examples, McDonald's, they have all three really easy: logo, big M, McDonald's is the name, and I'm loving it. They have the slogan, we all recognize all those things. Those are trademarks of the business, and they are protectable, and that can even boil down to even if you're a service provider and you have an offering that's named something, or if you're a product-based business and you have a line of specific candles or goods, the names on those items can even be protected as well. Copyright, on the other hand, is definition, an original work of authorship fixed in any tangible medium of expression. So to undo the legal jargon, basically something that's original that we can take and see, that's tangible, and it can be protected. So better way to explain that's usually through examples. So anything that you're uniquely creating that we can essentially show Copyright Office, hey, here's what this thing is. Everybody thinks of books when they're thinking of copyright protection. That's our classic example. Photographs, blog content, video, audio content, PDF guides. To contrast that, to kind of show you what couldn't be protectable, you are walking with your friend on the street, you're both having an open air conversation, and you say something genius and you want to protect it. We can't protect that until you write it down. We can't protect it until you put it into a video format. So keep that in mind. I had a client one time that was saying she thought of this amazing thing and was talking to somebody, and they were like, you should protect that. And she's like, how do I do it? We had to put it in writing somewhere, course format, somewhere online, to be able to protect that. Next. Our benefits of trademark protection are, well, there's a bunch, but the main ones I want to focus on are the fact that a lot of business owners think that they have to wait to do trademark protection, to file a trademark application, to start having those conversations. And you actually, I wouldn't advise waiting a really long time. The only time I tell business owners to maybe hold off on protecting is if you've picked a name or a business name that you're not 100% sure that you're going to go with. The reason for that is if we waste money filing an application, you're out that money. That's pretty much the only time I tell people not to move forward with an application. If you have a business name, a logo, a slogan that you're using or trying to use for your business, we want to protect that as early as possible because you don't legally own that name, that logo, that slogan, anything until you've protected it. So trademark law protects the item that you are registering. You do have very minimal rights to things when you first start using it, but because they're so minimal, that's why we really urge business owners to protect them early. Trademarks are a business asset, so when you think about businesses getting sold or bought or investors coming in and trying to value the business, something they look at is your trademark. That's ideally, if you ever see those lists of like, I don't know, Fashion Law does it all the time. They list out like top 20 businesses and what they're valued at. A lot of that rides on their trademark and their brand and how their consumers are perceiving their brand. So it's a major business asset. It's just something we have to get valued. You can use the registered symbol if you do register your trademark. So the little R with the circle around it. When you do register your trademark, it's a really good time to use that symbol to show other people, hey, I registered this. Don't use my name. I've protected it. Deterrence, kind of same conversation. When we have a registered trademark, ideally business owners should be kind of checking to see if anybody else is using the same name. So when we're registered on the trademark register, we're up there, it's public, and if somebody wants to use our own name, they should be going up there to see if it's already taken. Stronger legal arguments if you ever do have to file a lawsuit or threaten a lawsuit. If you have a registration, I kind of liken it to having the title for a vehicle. It's much easier to show that you own a car if you have the title versus if you're just like, this is my car, trying to explain that like, yeah, this is my car, you can prove that. And then Customs and Border Protection, you can actually register your trademark at the border so that helps prevent infringing products coming in. So this happens a lot where if our brand becomes really big, we have products that come in, China wants to jump on and start doing counterfeit something, you can register it and they will actually help you protect it at that point. Next. Levels of trademark protection. If you're a local-based business owner only, so good examples are like hairdresser, local, I don't know, like auto shop, we might only be able to look at state level protection because the trademark office at the federal level requires that you're selling goods or services outside of just your state. So it doesn't mean that if we can't apply for federal, we shouldn't apply. If we're local based, we should still get that state level protection, and then maybe we might expand one day and we can go get that federal protection. Common law protection, I think I mentioned this earlier, you do have default very limited protection, but again, difficult to prove if we ever encounter somebody that's infringing our mark. So that's why it's a lot easier and I think much more of a smooth process when we have that trademark registration. So if we have, this happens a lot with like Instagram, Facebook, if you encounter somebody who's infringing on your trademark, they sometimes just want to see that registration and they'll handle the problem for you almost immediately. If we don't have the registration, they sometimes won't even talk to you about it, or you have to have much more proof to be able to handle it. Next. Trademark symbols. I wanted to go through these because sometimes I do see them being used incorrectly. So just as a reminder, not that anybody here is using them incorrectly, but it's a good reminder. TM is your unregistered trademark. So you can actually use that at any point in time. We usually suggest it at the point that if we're working with a client and we've done the proper searching to make sure that nobody else is using the name, at that point we're like, yeah, go ahead and use the TM. But you can use it at any point. It's essentially you claiming that you are using the name and you're claiming your current rights in the name. SM, you might see it's a lot more rare. It's used for a service mark, so the trademark office goes off of goods and services. That's the main difference, it's just service mark. Registered symbol, you can only use that one if you actually have a trademark registration, so don't use it if you don't have a registration. It's actually considered fraudulent, so I didn't see it, just remove it if you have it, and we're all good. Next. Some considerations when looking at protecting your trademark. So assess your legal situation. We talked a little bit about this. Have you already launched your business? You can protect a trademark or apply to protect a trademark at any point up to around 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 years before you're actually using the name. And the reason for that is the trademark office allows you to apply early. And then once they've preliminarily approved you, then they will say, good, great, let's see the proof. Between the time that you file and the time that they say, okay, let's see the proof, that's probably right now 1.5 years. So you have a lot of time to be able to show the proof ultimately. If you're planning on using a name in like 10 years, I wouldn't say apply yet. Only if you're really in that like 2, 3, 3.5 year period. Where do you sell your products and services? So looking at, are we online sales? Do we have customers in different states? Are we local only? So looking at if we can file state versus federal. Are you settled on your name? So some business owners are like testing out a name, which is totally great, but if we're still not really sold on it, I wouldn't say always to spend and invest on the entire trademark process yet, but just understand that if we don't do those searches, you could still be infringing on another name. So I never say don't proceed with the trademark process, but if you haven't settled on a name yet, we sometimes got to weigh the investment of like, do we want to pay all that cost to get it filed? How would you feel if someone else was using your name? So this actually came up recently with a client that hadn't, it's actually come up a lot recently, with a client that hadn't filed their trademark application. And what we're now dealing with is somebody who has already filed that name, and we are trying to essentially get them to remove their name, like unapply for the application, and that means a lot of extra time and money for the business that has to get that done. So that's another common concern for business owners. And then what are your future plans with the name? So are you immediately going into a business knowing that you want to sell it later? Are you immediately going into business with potentially an investor? Sometimes people won't have conversations with you unless they know you have specific protections in place. So keep in mind as you're building the business, we want to be doing things to protect it along the way. Next. And finally, contractual relationships. So what are the basic contracts that your business needs to protect itself? And if you already have these in place, how can you make sure that they're actually protecting you? Next. So here is a non-exhaustive list, but this is a list we usually go through for most clients and then based on specifically what their business is doing. But your necessary contracts and or terms that we need to have in place that we suggest if you're a service-based business are a one-to-one client contract. So whatever that may be, if you are a therapist, if you are a coach, consultant, we want to have that contract in place. If you're product-based, where that relationship comes in are your terms of purchase. So wherever they're purchasing online, if they're purchasing in person, where do they see those terms that they're agreeing to that include like your refund policies, return policies, etc. An independent contractor agreement is something as you're growing when you're looking to hire. We're usually looking at contractors first and then moving into employees, totally based on your business though, but most of the businesses we work with start off with contractors. You want to have those people on agreements like almost immediately because you might be sharing confidential information with them. You are probably paying them and you want to have that squared away. And you just want it very clear what that relationship looks like on a piece of paper. NDA confidentiality agreements, these can either be used on their own or we can have them as provisions in other contracts. So confidentiality provisions and agreements are really important if we're bringing on somebody. We don't want them sharing what it is our business is doing, our trade secrets, etc. Or if you're working with somebody that you're maybe vetting them to see if they'll be a good fit as a contractor and you want to have conversations about like, we're going to be doing this project, here's what we have in mind, you can always ask them to sign an NDA. And if you don't even proceed with hiring them, at least you know that the communications you had with them are confidential. Refund and return policies are really, really important. Our one-on-one clients that deal with services usually remember this, but a lot of product-based businesses don't always have this up until they get burned. So always make sure to run through those. Even ours and ones that we're changing for clients, we're always modifying them. So as a business owner, you're never gonna get it 100% right before, but it's good to at least have basic policies up, and then as you're running your business, seeing like, well, that was a bad situation, how do we fix that next time? Privacy policy is required for your website. the minute it's live. So California rules and a lot of other states have rules that you have to tell your website visitor what you're collecting from them. It's just a necessary thing we have to have on our website. Terms and conditions, not mandatory, but highly, highly advised, because that's your spot where you tell your website visitor, hey, here's our return refund policies. Hey, here's how you use our website. Hey, anybody under the age of 16 shouldn't be on the website. All of that good stuff. Next. And our essential contract provisions, these are the ones that we find that are either missing from contracts or not as clearly laid out. These aren't, again, an exhaustive list, but these are the ones that if they're not in there, like, we need to change our contract probably pretty soon. Terms of payment, we really want to clearly outline the goods or services that are being exchanged. That's one that is not always missing because everybody's worried about what am I paying, what am I receiving, but the little ins and outs of like what happens if I cancel 2 months in, what happens if I cancel 3 months in, if I'm paying a contractor and it's a certain amount of time, what happens if they want to leave. So the little things like that we're sometimes missing. Liability, who's liable as a result of a dispute or a breach of contract or third-party relationships, especially if you're hiring a contractor that might have another person working with them. Now you're bringing like 3 people into the picture. So we want to know who's liable in the event of an issue. Confidentiality, we talked about how important that one is as well. And termination, this is probably the one that's missing most often. When can you terminate your responsibilities? So how can you get out of that contract? I know as business owners, we're not thinking like, how do we end this contract immediately all the time? But we want to know, how do we get out of it if this other person is just like not doing things right, weirding me out, doing unethical things? When can the other party terminate the contract? We usually want to have it be equal. We don't want to just be able to tell them, I can leave, but you can't leave. Intellectual property, who owns what intellectual property, and what are you sharing and what are you not sharing? So if you're collaborating with people, if you are going together on a product to sell with another person, who's sharing the IP, who's keeping the IP? Those conversations are usually a little bit more complex, but it's sometimes missing in the contracts we see. It's just a good conversation to start when you're working with other people. Next. I think that might be, oh, no. And considerations when assessing the need for your contracts. So if you're not going into business with anyone, if it's just you, you don't need a contract with yourself necessarily. But anytime you're bringing somebody in to help you, they should probably be on a contract. Graphic designers, assistants, employees. Employee situation in California is a little tricky, so we don't always want them on full-blown contract. Anytime we're bringing somebody in to help, they should probably be on an agreement with us. What information do they have access to? Do they have access to confidential information? Again, what are the IP rights that are at stake, the intellectual property rights at stake? And who should be responsible for presenting the contract? So we actually get this question a lot of, if I'm going into business with this other person, do I have to show them the contract or do they have to draft the contract? Specific on the situation, but usually what we see is the business is ideally presenting that contract. It doesn't mean that you can't have your own to present, but usually a business is probably going to furnish that contract for you to sign. And at that point, if you're receiving a contract, you can negotiate and look at it and see, does this protect me? Does this screw me over? What's this contract going to do for this relationship? And then how has our relationship already been established? So even if you've already hired people and have contractors on board, assistants on board, you can still backtrack and put them on a contract. It's not a waste of time. You can backdate a contract with their approval, let them know. But just because you're working with people doesn't mean it's too late. A really common situation we see, kind of rolling this back to trademark, is if you have someone that created your logo or somebody that's doing graphic design for you, if they don't have an agreement with you, they own that material. So when we go to protect a logo and we want to check, do you own the logo, and we don't have an agreement that assigned it over to you, that original designer owns it. So you can always backtrack and go back to them and be like, hey, would you sign this? I want to own the rights. I just want to make sure that I have it in writing. Next. So this is our, let me get my head out of the way. If you want to scan this, this is for a free consultation with me. And if you scan it and then fill out the little form, you'll get a confirming email with a link to schedule.
Taylor, thank you. Was that the last slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Literally the only attorney I have ever met that stays within the time frame, because it's billable hours. You're literally the only attorney I have ever met in my life that has ended early.
Thank you.
Can everyone get
I'm gonna move out of the way.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Taylor.